Good afternoon, Ambassador. It's an honor for me to be able to do this interview with you today.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled that you're here.
Thank you. Ambassador, you arrived to the United Kingdom shortly before the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Why was it important for you to be here for that historic moment?
Well, it was important to me personally because I had such respect for the Queen. And it was important to our government and, frankly, to our country because of their admiration for the Queen and what she did over so many years. So, as you know, our confirmation process can be rather long. But the Senate, in its good sense, decided that they had to have somebody here for Platinum Jubilee. So I was pleased. I got through on a unanimous vote, my second unanimous vote. And the thing that touched me the most, I was the last ambassador to present credentials to the Queen. And she was, as she always was, warm, caring, informed, and really one of the most amazing people.
How have the changes in the UK government and the passing of the Queen affected your time here?
Well, I've loved my time here, and I love this country, and I think I and the embassy made a difference in much of what we've done. But it is kind of funny. When I was coming over, the Congress told me some of the things to expect. And one of the things they said, you'll have great political stability. Well, not so much. So I'm on my fourth prime minister. But it is interesting because the relationship holds, the institutions hold. There's such trust between our governments and history. And the relationship's critical. I still call it the special relationship, but in many of my speeches, I've changed it to the essential relationship, which I think it is.
Absolutely. We're going to switch gears and talk about the security relationship, Ambassador. One of the constants of your time here in the UK has been their support for Ukraine.
Yes.
Can you speak to your firsthand experience of what you've seen the United Kingdom do for Ukraine?
Yes, and I want to compliment the United Kingdom because they have been a great partner, a great ally, and in some cases have leaned forward even more than we have. Their commitment is strong and they're staying committed, which is really, really important. When I first got here, one of my first meetings was with the Secretary of Defense, who was a strong proponent of Ukraine. So I went into my first meeting, and we're already looking at maps, looking at what's happening in Ukraine, looking at where troops are going. It's part of why we need the UK. They're the only country we share that much intelligence with, and it goes back both ways. But I compliment the UK. I was in a meeting recently with Keir Starmer and the president, and Keir Starmer, it's public knowledge, but he was pushing strongly for storm shadows. And I commend their courage to do this. One of the things that touched me is I went to Lid one time because the British soldiers were training the Ukrainian recruits. And it was one of the most amazing experiences I ever had when I was so much respect for the British soldiers. But when we talked to the recruits and met them, we often forget this is a volunteer army. This is a volunteer army. These were dentists and bartenders and teachers. Many of them had never held a gun before. And they were trained there. And it was like, I think, a 3-week session. And they were going right to the front line. It was pretty emotional. And I said to the commander, well, what are you going to do? He said, we're going to train them. And he said, many of them won't come back.
It shows so much resilience. Absolutely. I would love for you to share. The embassy supported a program in Trafalgar Square to commemorate the date of the invasion. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, I will never forget that night. Trafalgar Square was filled with people. The Secretary of Defense, Ben Wallace, spoke. Helen Mirren, who's been a huge supporter of Ukraine in a very powerful way, spoke. And then I spoke. And in the middle of my speech, talking about how committed we were to Ukraine and what we were doing and what we hoped to do, the crowd, a huge crowd, started yelling, "Thank you, USA, thank you." It shows how important we've been, and it was a night where I think people in the audience had tears running down their face.
I'm going to transition to an economic question, Ambassador. The US and the UK have one of the biggest trading relationships. Can you speak about the work you've done with businesses to encourage them to do more to help society?
Absolutely. First of all, it's a huge relationship. I think American companies employ 1.5 million British citizens, and on the other side, British companies employ about 1 million Americans. Very, very important economic relationship. Corporations should do well, but they also need to do good. They need to be part of their communities. They need to help people. When I was up in Belfast, the first time, such a fascinating place, and Northern Ireland's a fascinating place. And, America's been so committed to the peace process, but we've always wanted peace, and then the next stage was prosperity. So I've been trying to help on that, and the whole American government has. But one of the things I noticed when I was there, a huge amount of underemployment, a vibrant city, but young people being left behind, not young. And part of that was even though businesses were hiring, in many cases, people didn't have the skills and training. So Bank of America, I talked to them about this, and they've done some of this in the United States. So they stepped forward, and together we put together a program at Belfast Met to train 600 students. And it's working. I think we had our first or second graduating class. So that, in my view, is what companies should do. Gordon Brown, was an amazing prime minister and is an amazing ex-prime minister, has worked with Amazon to do something called multi-banks. And they've been a huge success. And basically, what they are is Amazon, in many cases, has goods in the warehouse, that wrong address, whatever, slightly damaged, but they just sit there. So Gordon and Amazon came up with the concept that we would distribute goods to people. It started more with babies, baby clothing, cribs, strollers, things like that. But now it's pretty much everything. And it's changing communities.
Ambassador, Winfield House has been such a busy place during your time here. What does soft diplomacy mean to you, and what have been some of your highlights?
For me, it represents showing the face of America. This house, for instance, beautiful house. I do live here, but I always call it America's house. And we have had many, many events here. And once again, the image of America is not just government to government, military to military, intelligence to intelligence. It's all the other facets. It's business, it's education, it's nonprofits, it's the arts. And I tried to showcase that. And some of the things we did were also, I think, hopefully helpful to the community. Like we did a fashion event here with Gabrielle Hearst, with Hearst Corporation. It was about sustainable fashion, which is something I also very much believe in. But at the event, they provided scholarships to young women to go to fashion school or any other school. I think that showcasing the good we can do. And remember, America has a responsibility. We have a responsibility to make sure the public knows what we stand for. A couple of the great highlights, including Hearst, was some of the things other American companies were doing. So we showcased American Express here because they're doing a very interesting thing. They have an academy for nonprofits to help them manage, to help them run a better organization. They did something like this in the U.S., and now they care deeply about the U.K., and I've heard the results are amazing. We also, one of my highlights personally, two actually, my daughter always asks me, "You work so hard, do you have any fun?" I said, "Yes, I have fun. I can work hard and have fun." Wynton Marsalis came, the amazing jazz musician. He came and he was going to play for about an hour. He ended up playing almost double that, and it was such an interesting audience. He had all his many jazz fans in the UK. He called them up to play. So it was, I will never forget that night. We also had, I think, a birthday party for Elton John. We've had a lot of wonderful things here. But I do believe Winfield House, I live here. I'm thrilled to live here. But to me, it's not my house. It's America's house. So we have to use it to showcase people and things and issues.
This is my favorite question, Ambassador. You've done a lot of work to inspire future women leaders. What does it mean to you to help inspire the next generation?
Oh, good question. Very important. I will tell you, the first day I went to the embassy, the wonderful embassy that I'm leading, which I love. But I walked down the hall of previous ambassadors, and it's a hallway filled with white men, huge portraits of white men. And Anna Armstrong, who was ambassador 50 years ago, kind of a tiny little portrait of her. So I took the responsibility here very seriously. If you're the second woman, you better make a difference. And I think the whole embassy team, we have. It's also important because I have a very strong daughter, who I think you know, and a strong daughter-in-law. We have to make sure that women have a place at the table. In some cases, they have better ideas, but they don't get to have the place at the table. In some cases, they don't raise their hand either. And this is something I talk about a lot. Once you've found your voice, use it. It's a quote from Madeleine Albright, and she used to say, use it because people aren't mind readers. But it's important. We have to make sure we keep pushing that. And I'm very proud of the embassy. Much of my senior team is female, and they're just terrific. So it's something, yes, I care about. It's something I've always cared about, and hopefully we've made a little bit of a difference here.
This might be a controversial one. Is the relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. still special?
Essential. It is. There's no other relationship. I've been an ambassador before. No other relationship we have with any other country in the world that's like this one. Some of it's because of Five Eyes, but it's really much more than that. You know, we've had a trust relationship. The UK is the only one, and it goes both ways. We share the type of intelligence we share. We have people embedded here. They're a true ally, but they're a true friend.
I love how you said it's real friendship and real allyship. That's really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Ambassador, as you reflect on your time here in the United Kingdom, what will you remember?
Oh, what will I remember? Oh, I've loved my time here. It is a wonderful job. It's an important job. The issues have been broad, and, you know, we know the world has been a pretty difficult place. I do think we have made a difference here. But what I'll really remember is kind of one thing the Queen said to me in the beginning. She said, "Are we treating you well?" which touched me. But that's what I'll remember more than anything else, the decency of the British people. And the garden and my dog having a wonderful time and a beautiful house with very high ceilings.
Ambassador, thank you so much for your time today. It was really wonderful to reflect together on all the wonderful things that you accomplished with our team. And it's been really an honor to work with you.
Thank you. I have a wonderful team, and I couldn't do half of what I've done without you. So thank you right back.
Thank you.